who have joined us today on this Sunday morning. A very good morning to you. Uh, this is our third day in the 3-day virtual event which we are doing. This is, we thought about doing an event on the future of healthcare, pharma, and allied industry. Uh, Before I begin with this event, I want to thank the entire CopGenie team for putting this together in collaboration with FICCI, Pharmaxel, Bloomberg Quint, and support of Pentamed Group and Zignation Lab. For those who don't know me or who are joining for the first time, my name is Amit Jain. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CopGenie, and I also run a cross-border startup accelerator called Zignation Lab. Over the last 2 days, we have had some great panel discussion and startup solution as a showcase as well. On day one, we had some veterans like Dinesh Dua, Sudarshan Jain, and the Honorable Minister Shri Ashwini Kumar Chobe, who's the Minister for Health and Family Welfare. Uh, we had numerous kind of discussions around that, and one thing that emerged is that make India as a pharmacy of the world. And I think in today's discussion also we will talk more about that. How is that possible? We also had the privilege to do some interesting session yesterday. One was on the financial market perspective. Madhu Kela was candid enough to talk through on how the market looks at the Indian corporates, Indian pharma sector corporates, and their views around that. And then we had uh, Kiran Majumdar Shaw, Dr. Velumani, and Sunita Reddy from Apollo Hospital shared their views over what is their perspective and opportunities in the pharma sector. Uh, I would just take another moment to give a little more intro about what is CopGenie. Our mission is to facilitate innovation through bringing together corporates, government bodies, and solution providers under a single roof on a single digital tech platform. Our platform is mainly built on two fundamental parameters that the innovation are the four corners of innovation. Incremental innovation can be done in-house, but if you want to do innovation which is radical, which is uh, out of the box, you may have to do a collaboration, and that collaboration is Copgen is a tech platform where you can do those collaborations. We have 5 modules where the corporates can sign up and they can do the innovation finding on the tech platform. Now, let me start with introducing the today's format. Today, we're going to have 45 minutes to 1 hour discussion on the series of points which we want to take forward. We also have 6 startups from India, Germany, and USA, and couple of startups from I think yeah. So total 8 startups we have who would be showcasing at 12:30 sharp. Today we have Abhay Chopra, Ashok Kumar Madan, Ramanathan V, Sanjay Singh, and Sudhir Kher, along with Dr. Apaji PV, who would be there for next 1 hour discussing on various points which we have. Myself and Nilesh Jain are going to moderate this panel. We also promised today that each one of us would try to bring some real outcome and learning out of this discussion. Then that would be worth a turn for all those who are going to spend next 1 hour with us. Let's get into action then. Let me begin with asking you to tell me. I mean, I'm just going to ask all the panel members to just tell me one line answer to this question. According to you, what one big threat or opportunity in healthcare sector that has emerged out of this pandemic that you would like to grab or be cautious about? I would also like to just request you to tell a brief intro about yourself once after the answer. So if you can give that one line answer about the threat and an opportunity, and then also briefly introduce yourself, that would be really great. We can start in the same alphabetical order. We can start with Abhay and then take it forward from here.
Thank you so much, Amit. So the one liner that you're asking is probably slightly tricky, but let me put it this way. Healthcare is going to radically transform to be consumer centric. It has very long been provider centric, and now with the technology and people's ability to actually taste delivery of healthcare through technology platforms, that's going to be a very profound change. We also see a threat because what's happening in the pandemic, there are a lot of common killers that have been ignored, and they're going to raise their ugly head over the years to come. So we have to be very cautious that we are not overdoing just one area and we are very balanced in how we provide healthcare for the future. So my background is I'm a consultant surgeon with a very deep interest in technology and actually transformation of healthcare in the years to come. I've been very actively involved with integrating data devices and creating platforms so all medical data is available for analysis for any provider anywhere in the world.
Thank you, Abhay. Shall we go with Mr. Ashok Madan?
Yeah, sure, Amit. Amit, I'm looking forward to this as an opportunity for the purpose of developing the research and development, and that too in case of the new chemical entities. Because we look at the record for the last so many years, we have not done well on that. And now with the new things coming up, the artificial intelligence, digitization, and so many new techniques to hasten the process of R&D, we look forward that our Indian companies will do a good job in R&D. Further to that, I'll say I represent Indian Drug Manufacturers Association. It was formed way back in 1961. Basically, it's a conglomerate of the Indian companies, and we have a membership more than 1,000 members spread across the country. Thank you.
Looking forward to talk to you more during the session. Ramanathan, do you want to take the next?
Hi, good morning. Thanks, Amit.
Morning.
I think this opportunity, the pandemic, to me, I would probably put it in sort of two proverbs that we all of us have learned when we were small and young, right? One is survival of the fittest, and necessity is mother of invention. So I think today, this uncertain times is a great opportunity for us to revisit and reorient ourselves for bringing up new ideas to cater to these new challenges. I think so. That's the necessity, the mother of invention. And
So, Ramanathan, I would want you to tell that one new idea which you think you will ponder upon rather than just, we have promised that you will give some concrete and real answers to the audience today. So, what is that one opportunity which you think is an
inventions,
opportunity?
invention, the ability to innovate, those organizations who are able to innovate, I think they will survive.
Sure. Do you want to give a brief background about yourself?
Sure. So after about 3 decades of work in the healthcare sector, currently I'm working with an investment incubation platform called Wilgrow. So we focus on social entrepreneurship and social impact oriented health tech startups.
Nice to have you here, and we'll have more startup discussion in the second phase.
Welcome, sure.
Surinder, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, I think, with whatever has happened in the COVID era, I think there have been opportunities and which have been traditionally our issues fundamentally, which is a threat, but the threat also becomes an opportunity. I think two areas, one of it has already been covered, basically is on innovation. The second is digitalization of the healthcare. There's a huge opportunity in that area. We are talking about home health and all. I think it's a huge opportunity, but I would say that we have to be very careful. When we talk about digitalization, it's very important that our infrastructure in telecommunications and internet is really sound, because when we talk about all this, that infrastructure is important. And that's a huge challenge for us as a country, I think, and it becomes an opportunity for us. I think that's where two areas I would definitely focus from a healthcare perspective and an innovation in the pharmaceutical sector. Well, to give you about my background, I'm basically a physician and practiced before getting into the industry, and have been with the pharmaceutical and the services industry within the pharma and biotechnology sector as a drug development expert. So I've been in the industry for about 28 years and currently work with startups, technology startups, and some biotech companies which I advise. I'm at BioQuest.
We're going to talk more about the technology startups because $1.5 billion has been invested in the tech in healthcare. So there are a lot of things we need to talk about. Sanjay, over to you.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Amit. In my opinion, there is one opportunity as well as a threat which we have witnessed in recent times is supply chain disruption in the pharmaceutical sector. And just to give you a perspective, The world sources 20 to 25% of their APIs from China. India sources close to 65% of their imported goods from China in pharmaceutical sector. We saw the repercussion of it where we had the shortage of even essential drugs. We had supplies for 2 months. And then just imagine if we were not to solve this crisis, there would be a huge mortality which will happen in a country. And this goes beyond India. So therefore, for the world to realize the acute nature of this calamity and look for supply chain sort of relocation opportunities. And India really figures very high in terms of providing the technical as well as the infrastructure ability for relocating global drug supply chain to India. And I think that's the largest opportunity that I see for this sector. As far as my background goes, I have spent close to 16 years, 6 years in the corporate and then over 10 years in corporate finance and investment banking in the field. I'm very pleased to be part of this panel, Amit.
Thank you. And Sanjay, you bring a unique perspective. Over the last 2 days, we've been talking about exports from India, pharmacy of the world. And you
Yes.
now, you're just trying to bring that very point of caution that you are also being the largest importer from that perspective.
Yeah.
And you need to also see on the import side. So that is an important perspective, Sanjay. We're going to talk. Nilesh, over to you.
Quick background. So I'm the co-founder of Clinivantage. We are in the healthcare space, planning to disrupt the ecosystem using technology and devices. With that, I've heard all of you. I think there's such a common theme coming out of this discussion today. We're talking about innovation. We're talking about drug discovery. We're talking about supply chain. We're talking about how new technology is going to force us to actually innovate. And what even Dr. Abhay brought out a point is how the consumer behavior is changing. I was just reading a report yesterday where one of the startups in the edtech space this year has doubled their revenue, $380 million. Can you imagine that, right? And we talk about struggling on the technology side for healthcare. And I think healthcare is the last industry or vertical that has yet not been disrupted by good technology coming in. We saw fintech sector changing about 15 years ago. And today we don't even think about banking, right? It's there. The same hasn't happened for healthcare. So with that, I think, Amit, why don't we lead into our question? The first question for today is, I'll address it to Dr. Abhay. How do you see healthcare technology playing a critical role moving forward?
Thank you, Nilesh. So traditionally, I'll tell you, the way healthcare has been organized was always around the convenience and availability of physician. And the model was very closely guarded because knowledge was all written in Latin. And it was very, the doctor had the privilege of being the only person in the know, which gave him a mystique status. Come the internet, and that status changed quite dramatically. And people now have started questioning a lot of healthcare decisions. And healthcare is starting to adapt to it. But what this pandemic is doing is it's actually allowing a much more rapid integration. So if you just analyze it to a smaller scale, what is healthcare? So it is nothing more than a data analysis which is done by the medical professional based on the multiple inputs that he gets. And when we adapt technology to this, it is quite possible that tomorrow's healthcare will look very different to what we are offering today. So today, actually, traditionally, the model is you have to go to a physician, you have to make your appointment, and based on his convenience, he will do it in multiple parts. So you might have one visit to just have your assessment and some basic treatment, and then you spend the next few visits getting some tests done, coming back with the input, and the whole model takes time, which is quite expensive and unavailable in most parts of the world as well. Now, imagine a technology whereby I actually can collect all my health data in my home, push it to a healthcare provider anywhere in the world and get the same opinion for a fraction of a cost. And that is the real change that is going to happen. The second part is, I'll tell you, in my own practice, I had never done video consults before the pandemic. And now almost 100% of my consults are all video. We have certainly realized that me seeing a patient physically is not offering much benefit. All I need is a strong data platform that will support my practice and keep the patient and myself safe. So there's a huge change in that behavior, and even when the pandemic is over, I can see that patients are going to demand video consults rather than actual consults. They're more efficient, they're offering the same value at a much lower cost.
So, Dr.
If I
Abhay,
extrapolate that, let me just complete that point. If I extrapolate that, what is stopping someone in the West getting opinion from a country like India or from Bangladesh, where the price differential is so different? A consultation here is a minimum of £200 to £300, while in India, the equivalent is about £20. That's where I'll stop.
good. So that leads us into a very good discussion with what Surinder had brought up earlier.
I will have two top-up questions on this. So let us just talk about on this point forever to Sanjay and Sudhir. So Sudhir, I think one thing is diagnostic, telemedicine, digitization, and imaging. This is one sector of technology which is getting evolved, and a lot of private equity VC investment is going. It's like almost $1.5 billion has just gone into this sector. The other thing is drug discovery and clinical trials. That is the other area where a lot of innovation is happening in, that's close to your subject. I want to talk, I want you to kind of spend more time there. And I want Sanjay to then lead, because Sanjay, you come from an M&A perspective, and maybe everyone may not be able to develop those kind of things. And what are you seeing from an M&A perspective, considering this, there is one side, there is a lot of innovation which is happening and people need to do and people are trying to do it, and what will happen. So Sudhir, over to you on the same technology loop, and then
Okay.
we'll try to
Sure. Just a correction. I'm Surinder. Just by the way,
Surinder,
I thought
sorry.
maybe no, that's okay. I thought if there is anybody else as Sudhir. See,
sorry.
from a technology perspective, especially when we talk about discovery and development, see, a lot of it has already been used in a partly, isolated fashion, I would say, so far. If we talk about clinical trials, for example, because clinical trials, on the other hand, are extremely important in the whole drug development process. When we're talking about getting new technologies, getting new therapies rather, to the patient as quickly as we can, especially with precision medicine and all the changes that are happening in the whole drug discovery and development domain. Now, when we talk about trials, COVID definitely did give us an opportunity to really get deeper into what we are trying to already initiate that have been taken across the globe. When we talk about trials, we were trying to think about how can we get, because as just was mentioned earlier on, the patient would come to the hospital. Now we're thinking about how can we go to the patient and actually run the trials. So the routine medical practice that is happening under routine circumstances, that also has to change, and that has to be applied to clinical trials as well. So ultimately in clinical trials, it's basically data. Now there have been some parts, we have been talking about point of care devices, which patient would keep at their homes, and then we would get the data, and that is what would get into the platforms of drug data collection. Now those have been changing as wearables, as devices are coming up more and more. And now there had been a challenge. We were always thinking about, whether the regulators will accept it, whether it is acceptable. Is the tool or the platform that we are using, it is validated? Now we have seen that change from the regulators' perspective as well in this COVID situation. And they have come out with tremendous openness in terms of, accepting these as norms during this emergency phase. But that's an example that has proven that yes, we can do virtual trials in that sense. Now, which includes even sending drugs to the patient's home, and even giving them devices whereby we can collect all the safety efficacy data. So that's where the whole domain of this clinical trials is changing, and that happens to through this telemedicine, through wearables. All of this is getting digitalized. Now, the only thing that we need to be careful of is that, where private privacy is very important in clinical trials and discovery, and where data privacies are very important. Now, we need to really make sure that we are taking care of those. And there are a number of you. Somebody mentioned that 318 million somebody made 318 million. But now we have to see that how robust these new technologies are from a safety perspective, from a data security perspective, which is extremely critical in drug development. I will just stop here. Maybe we'll talk further about it.
Thank you, Surinder.
Before I move to you, I think Dr. Ashok Madan, we have one important question out here, which is emerging, that data. If I look, and I was just recently reading a report that US is the dominant in terms of the data availability, and China and UK has taken a lead. Two things. UK did open up an data innovation lab where the patient data is available for the startups or the innovators. And China is doing the Chinese government is kind of providing those kind of data, and therefore the AI, so-called AI, is very, very kind of prevalent, which is a fuel for all these startups or the companies who want to do a data-driven innovation. Now, from an India perspective, and since you also represent the industry body, do you think that Indian government or do you have Indian government also participation in this thing? And is there anything which you have an insight into which we would, which would be helpful for the audience as well?
Amit, the data protection has been an issue of concern for India. Now, we have seen in the past a lot of things coming up where the social media has been implicated that you have been using the privacy of the individuals for their own financial gains. In this case, no. Patient data in a generalized form is okay. But when it comes to a specific, we have to ensure that the patient's privacy is maintained and data goes in a way which is more generic in nature, but it does serve the purpose. That is what the need would be and where the government's role would come in. And probably our government is working on those lines. Maybe the things are still not in public, but definitely the things are moving. Now, like in case of the data protection, what was being propagated earlier by the multinationals, that the companies should be asked when they are going for permission from the state drug controller or the drug controller of the new chemical entities, that the data should not be used which has been published by the innovator. Now, again, this was a question. Now, India has not provided the data protection in such cases, which was being asked for. Yes, in case of agriculture, this data protection has been given. So, as on date, data protection definitely is a question now where we will have to weigh where the balance would be struck. That is what we see.
Sure. Sanjay, sorry, over to you.
Hey, so I'll make quickly 3-4 points. The first point is that as far as the clinical trial space goes, India has huge opportunity, but I think somewhere in the ecosystem, by not allowing a simultaneous phase 1 clinical trial to happen in our country because of concerns around patient safety, actually put us back by several years compared to other locations like Asia Pacific, even Philippines or UK, of course, and several other countries. And in fact, I'll tell you, Amit, and all the other panelists, that Indian companies like Glenmark, Dr. Reddy's, and all of those guys who are trying to do basic research, they would conduct their clinical trials outside India because acceptance of the authorities of the clinical trial done in India was not really very high. And therefore, if they were to be doing basic research, they would go outside India and conduct the clinical. Now, that's a very miserable situation to be in because India has 20% of global disease burden. We have, all the disease patterns that you can find and do a research on. But, because we do not have sort of adequate data available, as well as the permission from the government to conduct simultaneous phase 1 trials, and therefore, willingly industry actually went outside. And that's a golden opportunity, I think, we need to correct and latch on. So that's first point. Second, with regards to innovation, which is happening and the investments, lately I have seen a lot of interest amongst the investor community on the diagnostic side. So, point of care diagnostics, even companies who are doing diagnostic services, both reagents as well as services are commanding huge amount of interest because India is a hugely underserved country as far as diagnosis of diseases are concerned. And I think, recently we have seen huge amount of money being raised. And in fact, some companies went public, they command very high multiples. And therefore, I think the new age entrepreneurs who are trying to dig deep, I think diagnostic is one area, both on the product and reagents, as well as the services, would be the key area for growth for India. And the last and the final point, where the most amount of foreign money or dollars have gone into, and I'm talking about $50 million plus investments, they have sadly gone into predictable cash flow areas. And those are largely generics, whether branded generics in India or generic exports. Because you can't really blame the investors because they're looking for safety of their investments as well. And where they find safety in branded generics, where companies are catering to the same class of Indian population and trying to make high margins, and therefore they see their sort of exits happening profitably, or the generic exports. That's an area. I'm not saying that those are bad investments, but I think it's time. And during COVID-19, in the country as a whole needs to get up and go towards the innovation engine. The kind of work that, for example, Serum Institute is doing with Oxford University to actually work on the vaccine, which is being done in a multilateral fashion. And if that were vaccine to be ready, then India would be one country which would supply to the world. So I think these are the kind of innovation cutting edge we got to be latching onto while we have been doing applied research, which is branded generic and generic exports.
I think Sanjay, you bring a great point. I have two things I gathered from your conversation. One, I think we need to move away from being a Me Too nation, right?
Yes.
Instead of just focusing on generics, we have to innovate, in much more advanced capabilities of pharma and drug discovery. But also that leads to capital and investments, given in this sector, right? And I think this is a perfect leeway for Ram to address, because Ram, I'm sure you're probably evaluating hundreds of startups and looking at investing, in these areas. What is your experience been, especially picking healthcare startups or capitalizing startups that have the potential to really be the innovators for the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of activity, though. I think we see a flurry of activity in terms of innovative ideas coming in. One of the risks or challenges that we see is on the adoption side, right? And the second is the data and data-related stuff. I think quite a lot of the data today is not probably in a structured fashion for people to really analyze. If you were to talk about from AI and ML, the penetration of EHR in India is hardly about, if you're talking about stage 7, we're talking about 3-4% penetration. So unless and until there is a bit of change happening from the perspective of data acquisition and data in a structured fashion, and the transformation happens in terms of the data coming in from various public and private hospitals, I think quite a lot of the innovations that we are talking from data-centric opportunities, I don't think we'll be able to really latch on to them.
True, and I think, Ram, you bring up a great point. We've seen other industries kind of create sandboxes. And, I've been working with a couple of institutions to see what we can do in terms of healthcare to create these sandboxes for new innovation to come out. And this is a limitation, right? To your point, EMR deployment in India is less than 3%. And that's a massive challenge, both from a drug discovery as well as from bringing out innovative devices and solutions, right? I want to come back to Ashok and really talk about the entire clinical trials process, right? We've heard how aggregated this is today. How does IDMA look at, sort of distributing the entire trials process because of the COVID situation now, and we've seen how technology is coming in? Is that something that the drug industry is looking at, is how do we actually distribute the trials process and make it more effective?
Thank you, Nilesh. Now, first, I'd like to mention about one comment made by Sanjay ji regarding the image of the clinical trials being done in India and the flight of the clinical trials to the countries like Philippines, Malaysia. Probably at that point of time, I feel it was not the concern of the image of the clinical trials being done in India, but it was more so because the issue was before the Supreme Court and the permissions were not coming, and they have a way to go to these countries so that the trials can be done. I think Surendra ji can also highlight on this, because image has never been an issue as far as the clinical trials done in India are concerned. This is what I feel. Maybe Sanjay ji has a different idea. Surendra ji, anything on this you'd like to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. Ashok, the quick
Okay.
point there
Yeah.
is not about the image. I think we need to work as an ecosystem. In clinical trial process is an ecosystem-driven process. The data management, the actually enrollment of patients, publishing of that data, and all of it. We need to work as an ecosystem, as a country, because we have a huge infrastructure and the disease burden to make it a huge industry for ourselves. My point was that we as an ecosystem have not realized the potential, even part of that potential that exists in our country. That was my point.
Yeah, I agree with you. Ecosystem has to be created for the conduction of the entire business of clinical trials in India with ease of doing business. And now we have been observing in the last 2 months, so many amendments, so many things have been done by our drug control office, where we are finding, yes, they are working on those lines, where are becoming more of a facilitator than being only a regulator.
Correct.
So change is coming in.
Yeah.
And definitely, as IDMA would say, we would like that the distribution of the trial goes now. This has already been done. It used to be earlier that only in one geography the trials were being done. Now today the trials are being directed to be done in all the 4 geographies of the country, the north, south, east, and west, so that we have complete pool of data from the different geographic conditions. That is what is happening.
Right.
This is what I wanted to.
I think
Right.
also have a quick question. When Surendraji brought up a very good point of how the new technology is going to change the behavior for both sides, the practitioners as well as the patients, right? Can you shed between Dr. Abhay and Surendra, can you shed some more light of how we see post-COVID situation changing for practitioners? Because this is a huge impact on hospitals, doctors, and sort of the provider network.
So
Yeah, go ahead. From a practitioner's perspective, Dr. Abhay, please.
So I see quite a radical transformation. Look, we are all talking about data. We are all talking about AI. If you look at the current adaptation of AI in medical field is really negligible. But we know that as data gets stronger, all the insights that we are going to gain into healthcare are going to be data driven. Data driven insights need huge amounts of numbers, and as our population offers us, whether it is drug trials, whether it is insights leading to AI, all we need is a robust platform for medical data to flow. And distributed drug trials will become a reality. Ability to use AI ML will become a reality. But this will only happen if the practitioner's mindset is changed and he's offered tools.
Correct.
Look at what currently happens. The doctor is left alone in his field. He gets his degree, and from that point, he's basically etched as a fossil for the rest of his practicing career. And his only change is dependent on what he seeks. There is no way to standardize care. I'm very sorry to say, but in India, the vast difference in the standardization of practice between 2 practitioners is quite mind-boggling. Now, if you think about it, technology can allow us to harmonize the care, set up standards, monitor outcomes. When we talk about data, data is actually a very simple transaction that happens here between the doctor and the patient. If we can somehow capture the data that generates out of it through a platform, a lot of the problems get answered automatically. We ought to start looking at what are the tools we are building for the physician in order for him to practice medicine and get the data outputs that we are looking for. We ought to offer him AI ML tools so he becomes much more potent in his own practice. And I see that is the data-driven change that I can actually see already happening. See, I've seen a startup yesterday, in fact last week, where we can measure all the vital signs by looking at a patient. Now, I remember I was taught to physically measure it. Now, if AI ML is going to give me vital signs purely by looking at someone, by looking at you, if I can tell you your blood pressure is so much, your heart rate is so much, and your temperature is so much, tell me what is stopping us from assessing people who are so-called normal and try to actually figure out whether we can actually pick up people who have a virus but are not symptomatic, or people who actually are likely to get a heart attack, or people who are likely to actually. So, AI ML has a huge potential, but we need tools for the doctors. Innovation has to start looking at what actually happens in reality. It is very easy for all of us to talk about data or distributed trials. What is a trial? Trial is nothing more than actually looking at the physical effect of a molecule on a patient. That data is happening multiple times, millions of times, in millions of small surgeries all over the country. But why can't we collect it? We actually depend on a select group of physicians who might have a bias in collecting the data that is giving us an output. I have known multiple trials that have actually been fraudulent and where we have to actually withdraw the molecules after being on the market for several years at the cost of billions. So drug trials to me are a very dear thing where we have to be much more distributed and honest in data collection. So when I see the post-COVID scenario, my feeling is physician behavior will change for the good. A lot of tools will emerge. Drug trials will get distributed, and that will transform and to an extent disrupt the existing healthcare industry.
So, Abhay, I think I have a point, just to your point, right? We've been talking about AI, we've been talking about the disruption it can bring. And this is a question to Ramanathan, right? Ramanathan, what we have seen, India has been always a follower. It has never taken a lead. So, like the generic drug industry, right, where we became a followers of becoming a generic drug. Maybe we might call ourselves as our leaders in generic drug manufacturers, but we are just not doing the disruption. So now, given the context that the big five of the tech industries, Facebook, Amazon, Google, uh, and the likes,
Netflix.
Apple, are
Apple.
all coming for this $3 trillion healthcare sector. They all have huge potential to do an AI. They would have already done a lot of AI around this. Do you think that Indian, maybe a pharma company who's taking the leap towards this innovation, or the Indian technology companies who would be wanting to go towards that, will or do have they have a chance, or they have already missed the bus? Because to me, I see that we might have already missed the bus. That's my perspective, because that's already been done a lot. We are already 5 years behind. So do you think that India will be able to take any leap here while we are talking that all these tools are possible, we can do this thing, or we are again going to be a followers while we'll just do some copy models again and try to do it? So want to take your view, since you've been also working in a lot of startups.
Very controversial question for sure. I think quite a few contradictory
So we want
thoughts.
to just bring out that right perspective, right? I mean, we need to be candid enough in our
Honest
discussion.
there. Yes.
The
Yeah,
Pandora's box.
personally, again, my personal views here is probably we were not well equipped to ride that bus. To the earlier point that I alluded is like, for example, the data that we are talking about, the digitization penetration that we are talking about has not gone into the country yet, right? As I said earlier, the EHR penetration is very low. Where will the data come from? Where will the structured data, which you have to use either for building drugs or for building AI/ML based devices, where will it come from? So unless and until the data, the structured data, clean data as they call, unless and until we have the ability to get the data, how can analytics run on it? So from that perspective, I think we probably are behind. I think whether we will catch up, that depends on our ability to feed investments into the infrastructure. Like for example, one transformation that we've seen recent in COVID situation has been the telemedicine thing, right? Couple of years back, telemedicine was not a very hot item. I think physicians had their own concerns, spending too much time, and they were not in a mood to adopt telemedicine per se. Then came COVID. Then came the scenario where patients couldn't come to, and patient wanted to come on internet, and they wanted to get the consultation. And policy from the government, right? Very quickly, the old policy which was sort of lying around got dusted, and the policy got released. The questions about legality of telemedicine got cleared up, and physicians were quick to grab it. Hospitals were quick to grab it. And today we see that tremendous amount of activity in the telemedicine space. Again, if you were to look at the Western country, they're talking about it as a $250 billion opportunity in health telemedicine. So I think such transformation, such sort of a policy measures, investments into infrastructure would probably help us catch the bus, maybe get a short route to catch the bus again.
So you're saying we need to catch the bus, which means you're agreeing that we are behind. So what do you think, therefore? I mean, if any one of us have a second view or a more view around that, what do you think are the real opportunities lying, right? I mean, let us just try to think about what are the real opportunities here, which we can still catch the bus, and we'll still be able to do it, rather than hoping that the policies will change, rather than hoping that something will happen and we'll be able to do it. So there are a lot of hopes, but even if I want to discount those hopes and try to see that are there any real opportunities which is there. So what, according to you, Ramanathan, Surinder, Sanjay, Ashokji, if any opportunity which is real opportunities which the audience here should kind of look up to and try to see that they can grab
Sure.
that up.
Sure, Amit. I think I do not see as much of a gloom and doom. I frankly see that India has huge potential to still catch the bus. The case in point is, for example, e-pharmacies. We have 3 or 4% penetration of e-pharmacies in the country, but the rate of growth that some of the e-pharmacies are going to grow at is just immense. And there is a forecast that by 2025, probably India's 20% market would be catered to by e-pharmacies, and that's a huge. India is a $20 billion drug market. And if you can imagine, 20% of that, India would grow to probably $35 billion by 2025, and 20% of that market is going to be huge. So what will happen? We have 4 or 5 large e-pharmacies, well funded by the likes of Temasek and various other global sovereign funds are taking that lead. And if government can provide the ecosystem, because we have seen some back and forth regulations around e-pharmacies, there some valid concerns around patient safety as well. But if we can get the pathway out and make sure that some of these e-pharmacies, because e-pharmacies can reach the customer directly, then you're talking about diagnostics, then you're talking about preventive measures, you're talking about wellness measures. So the all round patient sort of service can be happening through e-pharmacies. So I see some of these innovations are happening, which are quite promising, and frankly ahead of some of the other countries that of India size as well. We do not see e-pharmacies growing as fast in some of the other countries which are as developing as India. So I frankly do not see, just to sum up, as much of a gloom and doom. India has to find its niches, and an ecosystem has to work together to make those success stories happen.
So India has to find
I'd like to throw 2 more things into the mix so that the discussion gets more kind of concrete. One, the consumer behavior in India is definitely changing. We have an age group that is much more apt to digital technologies and mobile phones, right? So that's going to be a primary driver. Second, I really want to throw this to the panel. Is regulatory, is it being a hurdle, or is it actually enabling innovation? And this has been a challenge for India, throughout the stages, especially when we talk about healthcare.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go with it. Now, let me address the regulatory piece first. Now, traditionally, we know, whatever issues we have had in drug development, in healthcare, has always been regulatory is a problem. But let me tell you, in the last couple of years, there has been a big change in the mindset, because basically there is a lot of cultural and mindset issues that run across, whether it is consumer, whether it is doctors, whether it is physicians, or whether it is the pharmaceutical industry, and that includes the regulators as well. So there has been a big change, with the government putting in a lot of impetus on digitalization and making things ease of business in different ways when it comes to practicality. So regulators have been very, very open in terms of looking at openness of accepting new norms, new changes. So they have tried to go from a regulatory mode into a facilitatory mode. And we see that, though it will take a lot of time, because traditionally it has not been like that. So acceptance of changes, there is always reluctance to it. And they have been trying to look at non-traditional approaches. And that has been demonstrated even during this COVID period. And I think this COVID period has taught a lot of things that, which was not accepted culturally or in thought, that, we can do it. We alluded to, initially we were talking about doctors. Ramanath mentioned about how are you going to generate AI data when you have not? So data is a big, I still say that getting EHR and getting data is a huge opportunity for this country. And I completely agree. We have not missed the bus. People might be ahead. There is always opportunities. You can create opportunities for that. And if you don't have data, AI is not going to happen. And from their point of view, I wanted to address what our physician mentioned. I have had this challenge, and I'm telling you, managing this data is so difficult, because what you collect, because that's what goes back into drug development and discovery. Everything, the whole care is moving to outcome based. And that is how the consumers will also look at it. And getting the data from doctors is equally difficult, let me tell you, because the mindset was like that. We went up to kind of giving them audio things to because doctors were not open to use technology. And now that is changing. Now look at telemedicine. Everybody is getting into telemedicine when it comes to your own, to be really earning money on, because that's your livelihood. Then everything changes. So situations have, that's what happens. So I think from that point of view, you have seen from FDA also, the regulatory changes during this have been absolutely different, and they have been promoting technology, though it is for a short period of time, but that in itself has become an example that this can change going forward. So I see a lot happening, and some of the things, one more point which I missed was...
Surinder, kind of summarizing those 2 important points which you mentioned now. that the government is open, and
Absolutely.
I think Ashokji also mentioned that the government is open to take new thoughts. In fact, in the panel discussion on day one, when we had the honorable uh, health minister, he also said that if you have any innovation ideas, I'm open. So the attitude has changed. That is one
Yeah.
that
Changing.
is happening.
Yes.
And two, there is a change of behavior that some now the change of behavior may be because of the necessity, whether at the physician end or basically which Nilesh pointed out that the young generation are more adept or attuned to technology, and therefore that change in behavior is also playing a role. So the two important kind of facts
Yes.
which is emerging out of this entire situation. Yeah, I just kind
Can I
of
also
wanted to
be a
share
Sure.
lot
some
more
observations.
optimistic? I can clearly see that as the scenario evolves, India, especially given our medical pool of talent already available there, can really be the health giver for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Think about it. Our doctors emigrate all over the world to provide medical services.
I
Once we
so
have a telemedicine,
wanted you to talk on that point. I so wanted you to say something about that because all over the globe we find Indians as doctors in the top-notch
So,
hospitals.
correct.
Then why can't we be the health givers for the
So
world? And with
I see a
telemedicine,
huge
definitely there's
potential
a huge
once
potential.
telemedicine becomes a lot more potent and a lot more mature. I can clearly see that the Indian medical talent will be providing so-called health services for rest of the globe, given the need that there is still a need for human intervention. It is not just about a diagnosis. Healthcare has never been just about telling what is wrong. It is about the healing hands, about the caring
Correct.
touch. And when you said what is the opportunity, we have 1.38 billion opportunities. That's the way I look at it. Every Indian patient is potentially offering his health record for analysis, for AI, for ML. Our regulators should start looking at healthcare as the next cash cow. We actually got our development, a lot of our Indian revenue came out of IT purely because we had the young people who went into IT and went all over the globe. So, Amit, you can relate with that. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the next bit is going to be doctors. We send our engineers first, but doctors are there to follow. And I can see a transformation happening provided our technology comes together. I am pretty certain that the young innovative minds in India coming up with some amazing innovations. I've been privy to some of them. And I don't think they're any behind the West. I don't think we've missed the bus at all. In fact, the bus has not even started yet. And we are going to be driving it.
That's an important statement you're making. Yeah, yeah, Mr. Ashok.
Abhishek, Abhishek, when we are talking about the e-pharmacies and the telemedicine, we are probably concentrating on a particular segment of the country, which is not more than 35%. 65% of our masses do not have an access to the medicines. So when we are talking so happily about the pharmacies and telemedicine, we need to take care that, as just now mentioned by Dr. Abhay, that the healing touch and the healing hands are required. And when we go to the remote areas, these are the things which we will need to tell those patients because they are the ones who are not going to a doctor. They are the ones who are going to non-allopathic degree holders or to the guy who are the barefoot doctors over there because they are the ones who can provide him a simple medicine. If he has fever, he is to be given paracetamol. If he has something else, no, what we require is need to tell these barefoot doctors, regulate them to tell them, okay, yes, okay. As an initial medication, paracetamol is given to the contact person, but when it comes to a slightly higher things needed, the patient should be referred to the primary healthcare center. Now, this is where we will need, because that is the need of the country, 65%. When we look at Ayushman Bharat, which has done a good job, covering around 10 crore families now. Question is, 10 crore families converted to 50 crores. A good chunk of the population. But the success of the total thing is yet to be assessed because there are hitches which are coming in. But then there's also a need that we need to take care of the balance 50% of the population also. More than 60% is still left out. The middle class who gets crushed between the insurance policies, the insurance payments, and thereafter the non-payment by the insurance companies again. So where do they go? We need to look at that also. Now this is one aspect on the e-pharmacies and telemedicine. Then I'll just like to touch on the R&D part. The R&D part, the government of India had given around 5-7 years back the benefit under the scheme of 35(2)(ab of the Income Tax Act, where the 200% exemption was given to weighted test deduction was given. Now, this March 21, this has come down to a sunset to 100%. Now, during this period of around 10 years when this benefit was given, the large companies, we have seen the R&D expenses had gone from 3% to 7 to 8%, and in certain cases, even 11 to 12%. So there was a need that this impetus was to be maintained. And this impetus was given to around 5 or 6 sectors only, out of which pharma and biotechnology were also a part of. This is one. Secondly, we also need to inculcate a mindset among our medium enterprises. Our medium enterprises have still to come into R&D, whether it is the process R&D or they are not into the NCE so far, no question, because even the large companies are not into that, because that is highly time consuming and also capital intensive. This is the need I think our country will have to look around, that we have a potential, we have large number of the medium enterprises. Now, if you look at European Union, we have the countries like Germany, European Union, and UK, where we have large number of small medium enterprises who are doing research on very, very specialized things. And they come to a particular level and the research is sold off to a larger organization to take it further. I think this is what we need to look at also. My submission.
That makes a lot of sense. I
think,
So we have a startup discussion going to start very shortly. So that's a banner for that. We can't see a screen, Mir, but if you can switch off that thing, I will just make an announcement. Nilesh, over to you for the next question for this panel. So we have another 5 minutes left. So we want to kind of start consolidating these thoughts and kind of come to some kind of a content point. So Nilesh, why don't you take the last question?
I think we've addressed some of the critical questions around consumer behavior.
We are not able to see the screen, so if you can stop that screen share.
Yeah. So I think very interesting discussion today. Encompassing R&D, clinical trials, drug discovery, startup capital, requirements in terms of what the industry is doing. Before we conclude, one of the things that I would like to get an opinion from each one of you in a very brief, statement. If India is to become kind of the healthcare provider for the world, in your mind, what do you think are one or two steps that India as a nation should take, both from a policy perspective as well as from a innovation or development perspective? So with that, why don't we have Mr. Ashok start and then we'll go in a round robin kind of circle.
I think India now, we have to move from generic to biosimilars and biosimilars to new chemical entities. That is the way forward for us.
Fantastic. Mr. Surinder?
Well, I think 2 or 3 points which are very key, I would say, which was going to drive this new normal for us and which becomes an opportunity. I think a few things is basically consumer education. Regulatory drivers are extremely important, as we talked about. And I think data, technology, fundamental, which revolves around all of this, because that's going to have a significant impact. Not only this, we talked about telemedicine. See, there is a big public health impact it can have. So I think these are 2 or 3 points which I would say are extremely, extremely important. And around this, skill enhancement is very important, where we lag most of the time. We talk about all new things, but we don't really gear up with our skills. So, that becomes a challenge. I think these 2 or 3 points are extremely, extremely important and an opportunity. And that's where our whole, effort should go in from a government's industry, all the whole ecosystem can be built around that.
Absolutely. Mr. Sanjay?
2 quick points. Use of academia for doing basic research. That's how it happens globally. The best of research, basic research happens in academia, and then industry collaborates. I think we need to promote it. And second is used to have, the digital penetration that we have in a country like ourselves to leapfrog, to do fundamental research. I think, we can get past many of the infrastructure challenges that we have if we use and leverage our digital penetration in a country like ours.
Great point. Mr. Ram?
I think, in my mind, I think convergence of stakeholders is going to be the key for the transformation. I think Sanjay talked about academicians, right? Academia, hospital, healthcare delivery, innovators, policymakers, various stakeholders need to come in if you want to latch on to this great opportunity of transforming healthcare through technology and digitization. I think convergence of stakeholders is the must.
Very valid point, Ram. And collaboration, I think, is the key. Go ahead, Dr. Abhay.
from a regulator perspective, I see that focus on the last mile healthcare, especially with technology, should be a very, very key focus area for regulators. That is where vast majority of our healthcare happens. And if we can actually get that right, and then coming to Surendra's point, adapt EHR as a mandatory requirement as opposed to an option or a choice like US did, I think we can transform our healthcare, very, very rapidly and reap the benefits out of it.
Great. Amit, I think we are ready to move on to our startups, right? I'll let you kind of.
I would want you to do one concluding point and remark for yourself, yourself also on the same question, and then I would want to do it.
True. I'm super excited to hear, the comments and the discussion we have today, because, very passionately for the last 5 years, we've been actually working in the healthcare space, and we've seen a lot of these challenges. We talked about the last mile rural care. We talked about how technology is going to change the evolution of how healthcare is delivered. And I think, India as a country, we've reached a point, and maybe thanks to COVID, where a lot of practitioners have realized technology is very integral to what they're doing, which was not the case before. We talk to hospitals, we talk to doctors. It's not something they would even consider. It's considered as a cost center, not really as a competitiveness tool or as an advantage to look at outcomes, right? So I think this was a fantastic discussion to just get all your thoughts together, especially as it relates to India and how healthcare is going to evolve, both from a delivery perspective, from a technology perspective, and also from an innovation perspective. I think we're a nation, right and ready with the resources, with the capital now, and with the technology that we have. I think we are really embarking on something that's going to be massive, for the world.
So I would just like to conclude and have some hidden agenda from COPGENI perspective. I think what has emerged out of this is that, or the last three days of discussion is, collaboration is going to be one very, very important thing, be it government, be it regulators, be it foreign institutions, investors, startups, and corporates themselves. Healthcare is such a vast subject. Healthcare is such a deeply penetrated to each and every part of the world and each and every human being. And with aging populations, there are a lot of things which are coming and a lot of unknowns which are there. And therefore, collaboration for innovation is one way key thing. And that's the reason, this agenda of COPGENI doing this innovation platform is has been sorted out. With that, we would conclude this panel discussion and move on to the next.